This show does not constitute legal advice and is for educational purposes only. We are always available to field questions. However, until you have entered into a written agreement, your communications are not confidential and we are not acting on your behalf. Hi, I'm Sarah Holland and this is Man vs. Land. Today we have Conservation Officer John Demler with us from the New Hampshire Fish and Game. Welcome.
Thank you.
John, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name is Jonathan Demler, and I'm a conservation officer for the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department. So one of our primary responsibilities and a role that a lot of people see us in is serving as a game warden. We enforce a lot of the different environmental conservation laws for the state, primarily hunting and fishing. But we also are tasked with a lot of search and rescue. We're responsible for any inland search and rescue that occurs in woodlands or in the waterways of the state. And also we do a lot of carryouts with injured hikers and everything like that in the White Mountain region. And then finally, one of the big responsibilities we have also is enforcement of OHRV laws, which are your off-highway recreational vehicles. So that includes your four-wheelers and dirt bikes, and during the winter time, especially, we do a lot of snowmobiling. So,
excellent. And John was also most recently on this season of Northwoods Law. So
that's true.
Yeah. Yep. So can you tell us if there's going to be another season?
Right now, I don't think any of us know. Obviously, I'm sure everyone would like to do some more. It's easy for us. We just do our job, and they follow around and kind of film us, and hopefully, people are interested in it. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Excellent. So if you like the show, let the producers know that they need to come back to New Hampshire next year.
Thanks.
So it changes seasons. So we're leaving winter, going into spring, and then we start hunting season. And also folks are getting out on the water. So let's talk a little bit about some of those things that those folks need to pay attention to. Safety items, regulations, licensing, education. So folks can be in the know when they get ready to go outside.
Certainly.
So let's start with the upcoming hunting season. We have turkey season coming up pretty quickly.
Yes.
At the end of April, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what those regulations are and what that season looks like.
Okay, so the spring turkey season is it's a great opportunity for hunters to get out and for sportsmen in general just to get outside and enjoy a hunting season rather than waiting for the traditional fall time. Turkey are very active during the spring. That's where you get your traditional big tom turkey who's all fluffed out and strutting through the field trying to attract the hens to them. And that's why this time of year is such an important season for us to help maintain some of the turkey populations, but also just to give sportsmen a chance to go out hunting. So one of the major things that people have to realize is that their last year's license is now void. They have to get a new hunting license for the 2017 year. But on top of that, in order to purchase a license and then be able to hunt turkey, you have to purchase your turkey tags, and that'll provide for you a tag to take a turkey during the spring season and also a tag to take a turkey during the fall season. So make sure you don't just get your hunting license, but you also get the turkey tags that accompany that.
Great, and there is a youth turkey season as well.
That's correct. So it's a youth turkey weekend that is actually the weekend before the turkey season itself opens. So this year will be April 29th and 30th, a Saturday and a Sunday. And what it does is it allows a youth hunter, so somebody that's under the age of 16, to go out and to get to enjoy a turkey hunt kind of before the rest of the state goes out and takes their time doing turkey hunting. So the requirements there are kind of silly because some people think, well, I'm a youth, I don't need to have a license, but they still need to buy a turkey tag. So that's important to make sure that they do have their turkey tags. And then they have to be accompanied by an adult, which would be an appropriately licensed hunter. So it's somebody that also is able to have a hunting license, and then that person also has to have their turkey tags. So the restrictions are just that the youth is obviously the one that's out hunting. So they're the only one that's allowed to have the firearm or bow and arrow or whatever they're using to hunt the turkey with. But whoever the accompanying adult is, they're allowed to do some of the turkey calls to try and bring in the turkeys and everything like that. So
good teamwork there.
Yes, yep.
Excellent. Let's talk about some education. So if folks were interested in hunting for this upcoming season, maybe have never hunted before, what type of education is required and where do they find that?
Okay, so in order to actually obtain a hunting license when you turn the age of 16, you're required to complete a a hunter education program. And one of the best ways to find that is just to go to huntnh.com, and there's a big listing of upcoming programs. And they vary. Some of them are several evenings throughout the course of a couple of weeks or a month. Some of them are more intensive, like a 3-day course that goes over like a weekend. And then we even have some online courses. So it's kind of up to you how you want to be able to take it. But regardless, you do have to have a hunter education card and certification in order to get your hunting license. And that's pretty much universal throughout the 50 states and Canada. Most of North America all follows that. So wherever you go, if you had hunter education in a different state, those hunter education requirements will apply to New Hampshire and vice versa. So the way that most of the hunter education classes go is once you reach the age of 12, you're allowed to take it to get your hunter education card. And obviously until you're 16, you don't need a license. But it's just something that teaches, it gives you a very good overview as to hunting, especially the safety and a lot of the ethics that go along with being a good sportsman. And that's something it's required later on, but it's encouraged for people in that middle school age that are starting to get really involved in hunting.
Yeah, and there are also, if your kids go to summer camp, which is what I did when I was younger, there are some camps that do offer hunter education, so you can kind of get them in the swing of things early in a nice group setting with their peers. So that's really good. And
I also kind of like to point out that just because you don't have to be a 12-year-old, if you're interested in hunting later in life, it's the same exact thing. You'd still go to the same hunter education programs. So I don't want to say that we talk about the minimum age is 12 and you have to have it by the time you're 16, but a lot of people get interested in hunting through friends or just later in life they have maybe more time to go out and spend hunting or enjoy the outdoors. And so it's for everybody from ages 12 all the way up till 80. I've had several people that were avid outdoorsmen their whole lives, and they just decided, well, maybe this year I'll go hunting. So they were in their 70s, and I had people in their 80s taking hunter education before. Yep.
And it's a good refresher too. If you don't hunt, if you're not an avid hunter and you're not 100% sure of all the laws and requirements, that it's good to just go and take the class and just get a nice refresher as well. So excellent. So to switch things from hunting to fishing, there's no requirement for education for fishing. That's
correct. Yeah, we do have the Fish and Game Department, and again, if you go to fishnh.com, you can find on our website the different programs we have. There are some classes that are offered through some of the Allbrook Hunter Education Facility and then throughout the state that do focus on different aspects of, they have ones on bass fishing, trout fishing, fly fishing. So it's kind of important if you want to get in a lot of these classes, most of these classes I think are free. So if you sign up for one of our newsletters or to be notified by email, you can see there's a lot of great opportunities to go learn about fishing. So there is no requirement. You don't have to have a fishing education class in order to get your fishing license. But there are some special classes you could take, especially if you're interested in something and you're, some of the fishing sports and fishing for certain species get involved, and you start trying to go and talk with your buddies and they tell you one thing, you talk to somebody else, they tell you something else, and it's always good to go get a class from one of the biologists or one of the sportsmen that put these on. And yeah, they're very involved.
Yeah, like how to measure a fish.
Yeah, right? Yeah, that's exactly, yeah.
So talk about some of, not the requirements, but things that you need to know when fishing, specifically like inland waterways, because we are here on the Pemmy River and the Baker River, so folks tend to fish those a lot. What are things that they need to be aware of?
Okay, so basically there are a lot of different bodies of water that have regulations in the state of New Hampshire. So if you're going to go somewhere that you're not familiar with, or you're out of your normal area, it's kind of important to check. We have a fishing digest that we produce every year, and it has a list of every body of water that has special rules in it. So it's always a good idea if you're going to go to a new pond or a new section of stream or river, just to check and make sure there's not special rules, because we do manage bodies of water for different species. Some of them, like a trout pond, they have regulations that you're not allowed to ice fish on it during the winter, and then they don't open up until the fourth Saturday in April. Whereas a general regulations pond right now, if you went fishing, we're early in April right now, you'd be allowed to go fishing. So it's one of those things you definitely want to check. There's a lot of different rules about sections of rivers that are fly fishing only.
Okay.
So you can't use any artificial bait there, or there's some places that you're catch and release only, some of the more remote ponds or special areas. So we do have a lot of rules. Basically, if you're not able to find something out, give Fish and Game a call. You can call one of our local regional offices, or you can call into headquarters, because it's always better to take, everybody has that friend that knows all the rules, but if they're not a conservation officer or one of the biologists, then they don't really know. They might not know the laws specifically.
Right.
So get it from us. That way you're not going to end up running into one of us as we say, hey, you're breaking the rules right now, and then you could get a ticket or something along
and
those
laws
lines.
do change. So what you're
Yep.
familiar with, maybe 5 or 10 years ago may not apply today. So it's definitely a good idea to give you guys a call and to pick up the digest, so then you are aware of what's going
Yeah,
on
exactly.
for this particular season. And let's see. So we talked about fishing and hunting. What else do we have on the list? How about safety? I know right now there's a lot of excess water
Yes.
in the rivers because runoff from the snow melt, but also from the recent rain that we've had. Talk about safety, search and rescue, how you guys play a part in that.
Okay, so I guess we'll talk a little bit about fishing and just some of the swift water.
Perfect.
The heavy runoff that's coming out of the spring thaw draws all the snowfall that has accumulated. That turns into water. It comes down in the brooks, and it provides a great spot for people to go fishing. Maybe today isn't the best day because we've had some heavy rains, and it's really swift. But something that's important to remember is no matter what water conditions, even some of these smaller brooks and streams, they really can push an awful lot of volume through them. And as you start to wade in, people like to think of that iconic fly fisherman that's in waders, that's out in the water, casting back and forth, and it's something that they're in. That's what we think of in our minds, but in reality, it can be pretty dangerous, especially in these early spring conditions with all that water moving. It's easy to get swept downstream, and a lot of the rock formations that the streams flow through, people can get snagged underneath them, or there's down trees that are under the surface of the water, and people can get caught in too if they lose their footing. So it's always best if you're going to go out, first off, that somebody knows where you're going. Really check the stream conditions, and as hard as it is for some of us, if you set a plan and you get to where your favorite fishing spot is, and it looks a little more dangerous, or it looks like it's conditions that you're not used to, the water level's raised, or it's really flowing a lot more than you'd like, maybe it's not the best spot to fish for that day. You come back another day when the water is lower, or go find somewhere else.
Yeah, that's definitely good to know. I always get nervous, especially with kids. They want to go. It's really nice out.
Yeah.
They want to go for a walk because they've been cooped up all winter, and they definitely want to go down and check out the river, and that's always makes me nervous.
Yeah, certainly, and that's one thing too that my experience, the game warden portion of things, coming up upon a fisherman, I scare a lot of them because they're very focused as to what they're doing.
Yeah.
And even though I'm walking down the riverbank to them in broad daylight, just walking up to them, and I say, I give my standard greeting, how's it going? You having any luck? They jump because they're really intent on trying to catch that fish or do whatever it is they're doing. So if you go fishing with children, it's easy to get very focused on what you're doing, and it doesn't take them, a child, very long, for a slip and a fall into the water, and next thing you know, they could be downstream, and it's a matter of only a few seconds. It can go from, as opposed to saying, hey, get back away from the water, to now having to go into a rescue or some kind of emergency situation.
Yeah. And what part do you guys play in rescue?
So we are, for the most part, we are tasked with all the inland search and rescue. Unfortunately, because we have so few members, there's only 30 or so of us that have patrols within the state. We don't do a lot of active rescue itself on the water. That usually, like if somebody's in a river or a stream and they need to be rescued, the local fire department is probably the fastest response because, like myself, I cover 9 towns. I might be on the other side of my patrol, or I might be somewhere else in district. So it takes me a while to get there. But we do our best to provide for those immediate rescues. We also have an airboat that we can use for rescues in certain situations where a normal boat motor wouldn't be able to go through some of these streams or swampy areas. We're able to use the airboat. But unfortunately, what we end up doing a lot, especially in water, is we have a dive team that's a recovery dive team. So that's after the rescue portion is over. So we find ourselves doing that a lot more often than we'd like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's water rescue. How about hikers?
Okay, so that is a lot that we play a very active role in. One of the most popular hiking regions really in the world is the White Mountains, just because of its access to New England. Most people from anywhere within the state of New Hampshire and then down into Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and we see people from all over into New York City, and then just the country itself are able to get right into the middle of the White Mountain region. They're able to get right to the base of Mount Washington or into Franconia Notch. So it's a very high volume of people up in the national forest that are hiking each year. So obviously, if you've got hundreds of thousands of hikers, there are going to be incidents that arise from that. And what we do a lot involves not just like the search part. If somebody's lost or hikes off trail, then obviously we're trying to help find them. But there's a lot of injuries that when you're up in the mountains, there's no way. It's not like you can just call the ambulance to come up and pick you up. If you've been climbing for 3 or 4 hours and you slip and you have a broken leg, then that means you've got to get carried out. So that's where we come in. Again, we're fairly low staffed. So maybe 3 or 4 conservation officers can show up to a carryout, and that's when we rely heavily on volunteers, because a litter that we use to carry a patient down, it requires 6 people to carry it, and then those 6 people. Generally, the more you have, the more it can trade out. Because if you're just carrying it the whole time, you get tired pretty quick and it's slow going. But we have several volunteer rescue groups that, even though they're volunteer, they're a professional rescue group, and they help us out. The call goes out 24 hours a day, and they have members that respond. And if it weren't for them, we definitely would be in trouble a lot. It's the volunteers that help really drive the whole search and rescue effort, especially in the White Mountain region. So.
Excellent. Yeah, that's really important. How would someone get involved with one of those volunteer groups? Is there a resource link on your website?
Also, the three major ones there's the Pemigewasset Valley Search and Rescue, then there's the Androscoggin Search and Rescue, and there's also the Upper Valley Wilderness Response Team.
Great.
So any of those, you can go on to their websites, and they have contact information there. They do, like I said, they're not professional. They're all non-for-profit volunteer organizations, but they do have a requirement to be on their rescue team of people that are prepared with gear so that they don't become a victim themselves. Yeah, they're conditioned enough to conduct the carryouts or to do searches and everything like that. So it's definitely something you could contact them or read up on. I also want to point out that if you're out hiking, and you come across somebody that's injured, or you come across a carryout that's being conducted, we get a lot of volunteers that are just people that are hiking that day on the trail, and they say, hey, what can I do to help? And if they jump on the litter just a couple times to help us carry as we're rotating down and moving down the mountain or up, depending on where we have to go, it does make a difference. So it's always nice to have just those people that are there.
Right.
And they kind of tag on for the carry. They're there for 3 or 4 hours, even though they had driven up from Boston or something like that. And then when they get down to the bottom, we get their name and information, and they're off, and that was it. We'll probably never see them again. They're not part of an official organization, but they really helped that day. So.
Excellent. Oh yeah, just that sense of community, being able to assist. What would you recommend a hiker do before, how to prepare before they go out? Okay,
so there's a hiker responsibility code, and I'd encourage anybody that, even people that are seasoned, think that they've been out hiking a lot, or seasoned veterans, it's always good just to read and review and kind of look at maybe what your plan consists of. If you go to hikesafe.com, they have the list of the hiker responsibility code. So one of the major things, is just having preparation through your knowledge and your equipment or gear, they say. So obviously, if you know where you're going to go hiking, the conditions of the trail, those are some things that are important versus if you just show up at a trailhead and decide you're going to start going up.
Right.
And it happens quite a bit where people, they don't really know where they're going, they don't have a good plan. And then the other part of that preparation is just having all the appropriate equipment. So there's several different lists. Some of them are more involved than not. They say there's roughly 10 essentials that you should be carrying with you at all times. But what's important to remember is that you've got on appropriate footwear for climbing. You've got clothing. A lot of times what we run into are people that it's an 80-degree day like a couple days ago. We had really warm weather, but that doesn't mean that there's not snow and ice still along the trails. And as you gain elevation, you're going to greatly decrease the temperature. So you might feel comfortable in shorts at the bottom, and by the time you're halfway up, you've dropped 20 or 30 degrees, and you need some appropriate clothing. So footwear and appropriate clothing, have food and water is a big thing. Map and compass, obviously, in case you get lost. Everybody likes to use, I have one on my belt. I got my phone that I use for a lot more than I should, I think. But all in all, this is a mechanical, it's a piece of equipment. It requires batteries. At some point, it will fail. So we run into a lot of hikers that are using this as a source of map, as a source of compass, and a source of light. And that's too much for it because the battery's going to die.
Right.
And it gets dark and they don't know where they are and they don't have a headlamp and things like that. So the phone isn't the end-all be-all. Make sure you've got the appropriate equipment to go along with that.
Now, if someone were to be rescued, is there a cost associated with that?
So generally, if somebody goes through a rescue, obviously it's something that involves quite a few people, and usually officers in our department. It's above and beyond what we normally do, depending on what time of day it is and everything like that. So you can be charged if you're reckless or negligent, basically, if you had made decisions that a person in your situation under normal circumstances wouldn't make. So it's something to keep in mind. Most people really aren't trying to go out there and do anything reckless, but it does occur, and there are quite a few rescues a year that could have been prevented just by simple planning or by somebody deciding, hey, we probably shouldn't go today, but they pushed through, and so that's where we try and recoup some of the costs that the Fish and Game Department has expended on that.
Right. And talk about the Hike Safe card.
Yeah, so it's a voluntary card that you can purchase for either yourself as an individual or as a family, and the money goes directly to the Search and Rescue Fund, which might be kind of important to point out that this Search and Rescue carried out by the Fish and Game Department really is all through the Fish and Game Department's own funding. So this goes right into the Search and Rescue Fund, and what the card does is it provides you protection against if you were negligent in hiking. You won't be charged for the cost, but obviously if there's something recklessly or if you purposefully commit an act that's that is very dangerous or something like that and requires you to be carried out or rescued, then you can still be charged. More or less, it's really a good way of just kind of attaching you to that hike safe mentality and providing a donation to the Search and Rescue Fund, because if you're part of that community, you see it at some point. You're going to see it where somebody else on the trail, or you hear about it,
or it's you.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
exactly.
Okay, well, that's all great information. I want to circle back, though, to the fishing season. And you had mentioned before we started the show that you were involved in stocking right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit.
Okay, so a lot of New Hampshire's, what we would consider now native species or species that have been around for a long time are actually introduced, especially trout. So there's brook trout are native to New Hampshire. But there's several other species of trout that were brought in throughout the course, in the 1800s and 1900s. And nowadays, what we do basically, in order to maintain the levels of fish, to make sure that sportsmen can be out and enjoying quality fishing, is we have several hatcheries, fish hatcheries throughout the state that raise, basically that from eggs to fish that are ready to go in the rivers. Fish. And this time of year is the time when we're going to put them into those lakes and streams, and that's where the fisheries division comes in. There's biologists that go through and they give you kind of a stocking schedule. They come up with a plan, and they take input from conservation officers as well as to what bodies of water get how many fish. But it's a fun time of year because you get to go down to the hatcheries in the morning. You load up and fish onto one of the big trucks that has a special tank on it to make sure that the water's oxygenated and stays cool, and then you drive out to your lakes and streams, and there's a variety of different ways we can put them in. Sometimes some of the bigger lakes, maybe you use a chute just to run the fish down and into the water. Lots of times if it's available this year, it's not so easy because there's still a lot of ice on some of the lakes and ponds, but you put them into a boat, you launch your boat, and then drive around the lake and dump them out. Or as you go down a stream, some of these brooks, you drive down the road, and every bridge you come to, you get out and you throw a couple of nets of fish in and go to the next spot. And so all in all, we're just trying to get fish out there as best as we can and make sure that everybody has a good season. There's plenty of fish out there to catch. So
Perfect. That's a great way to end the show.
Yeah.
So just just to review, if you don't know, ask.
exactly.
Definitely be educated, get your licenses, and yeah, just have fun and go outside and enjoy.
Certainly.
Awesome. Thanks, John. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
All right.